All right, so this is the trimming demonstration. This is the bowl that I threw yesterday. And what happened was it went into that drying case and is now leather hard. I can touch it and I'm not going to leave fingerprints on this. Um, but it is still soft enough that I could easily carve it. And you can see if I turn it over, it's soft enough I can still do stuff to it, which is exactly what we want in terms of the dryness. Now, you can see the bottom here is kind of rough, which is just a natural thing, what happens when you take it off of the wheel. So that's why we trim. We're trimming to remove excess clay, and we're trimming to clean up the foot to make it look better. So the first thing we want to do is we need to get this form centered, and we're trimming here. So we're going to turn it upside down and place it on the wheel here. And before you turn the wheel on, make sure that the pedal is not engaged. So if the pedal is pressed down and you turn the wheel on, this would suddenly lurch forward and your piece goes flying off and can get wrecked. So be aware of that. And you can see the tools we're going to be using here, which are a slightly damp sponge, the bigger trimming tool, the smaller, more precise trimming tool. And this has got that crisp edge that I was showing yesterday in the pottery wheel throwing demonstration. This is the one you wouldn't want to use when you're throwing, but it's perfect for when we're trimming. And we also need a needle tool, as well as some little balls of clay, which we're going to use to hold this down once it's centered. So first thing we need to do is to get this form centered. Now, what I'm going to do to center it is essentially this. We'll spin the wheel slowly. I'm going to turn it on first. Spin the wheel slowly. And I'm gonna use a needle tool to do this, but you could use your finger theoretically. And you're looking to see if your finger will evenly touch the surface all the way around. So if I bring it over here so you can see, it like hits and doesn't hit, hits, doesn't hit, hits, doesn't hit. As long as this is not moving, the whatever you're using, it will reveal which direction your form needs to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it spinning nice and slow. I'm going to brace my hand right here. I'm going to hold the tool. I'm going to bring in my other hand to hold the hand that's holding the tool very, very steady. And I'm going to come in, not straight into the form like this, just slightly angled away so it doesn't, carve into it or damage it too much. And what I'm doing is I'm going to just slightly slow this down even more. So the tool is hitting, not hitting, hitting, not hitting, hitting, not hitting, hitting, not hitting. I'm going to stop the wheel where it's hitting. So it's hitting the tool there, and it wasn't hitting over here. So I need to push the form a little bit in this direction, and then try it again. So I'm just going to nudge it ever so slightly, and then spin it again. Slowly. The slower you do it, the easier it is to reveal, whether it's centered or not. So now it's going, and then now it is not hitting, and it's hitting and 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 hitting, and then this is where it lifts off, right there. So now that I've stopped the wheel on the opposite side, it's hitting here, but it wasn't hitting here, and then now instead of pushing it that way, which would make it more off-center, I'm going to bring it just a little bit towards me, again, towards where it would need to be. And now this time, maybe it's just like a millimeter, because that was very close. A very, very small adjustment there. And now, again, spin this slowly. Bring that tip in. Now it's hitting evenly. It's definitely hitting, and that looks good, 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 good. So now this tip is evenly hitting all the way around. This form is now completely centered. And if I do it here so you can kind of see it from the side a little bit better, I'll even use this side so it's more obvious. You can see the tip of the edge of this tool is just grazing evenly around this form all the way as it spins. That tells you that it is centered. And when we trim it, it's going to make this look much more symmetrical and be exactly the way it should be. So that's the idea there. Next step is we need to get this form locked onto this wheel so that I can spin the wheel faster for the trimming part. And obviously we don't want this to go flying away. So I'm going to take my little ball of clay. Like really all you need is about the size of a ping pong. And I'm not actually doing anything that's touching this form yet. I do not want this form to move at all right now. If this form moves, I've got to go back and do that step again from the beginning, which can be kind of a pain in the neck. So I'm just going to take the clay and kind of twist it onto the wheel a little bit, close to the form that I'm going to be trimming, but not touching it just yet. I'm just getting these in the correct position. Just like that. Now I can put my hand over the top of this to kind of secure it down so it doesn't move, and I can pinch this clay so that it kind of secures my piece. You can kind of see how that looks. Just like that. Do the same thing here. And I do take special care to make sure the clay is properly stuck down to the wheel here, this clay that I'm using. And also that it's kind of not just making a little bit of contact, but making enough contact so that I know that I can spin this wheel faster and my bowl is not going to go flying away. That is the key. The clay that I'm using to lock it down is the same clay that I used when I was throwing this bowl. So you want to use the same clay. And then also, you don't want this clay to be super soft, but also not hard. So I think the best clay that you can use for this stage is if you just get regular clay out of a recycle bucket. That clay is going to be drier than it would be if it was fresh clay in a bag, but it's basically a little bit harder than the fresh clay you would use from the bag, and that's kind of the ideal setting of what you want for that type of clay. So if you can get clay that's just a little bit drier than fresh clay out of a bag, that's the clay you want to use. If not, you can just use regular clay out of the bucket. Okay, so I've got this locked down. Now I should be able to spin this nice and fast, and it shouldn't go anywhere. That's what we're looking for right there. I don't need to spin it that fast, but I do want to actually spin the wheel kind of fast when I do this. Now the first step is to use this tool. I like to put this right in the palm of my hand like that and grasp it like that, and I like that narrow end to be pointing up. I'm going to bring it in here at 3 o'clock, for me, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I'm bringing it in at 3 o'clock, and I'm going to be holding the tool steady like this. You can see my arm is braced on my leg, and as it spins, I'm going to let the spinning do the work. I'm really not going to move the tool around very much. I might just angle it a little bit to create what I'm doing, but it's the spinning that's really doing the work. So I'll get it spinning. And too slow, you can make errors when you do the trimming, so you kind of want it to be at a nice speed like that. So I usually put it at medium or just slightly faster than medium. And if I do anything with my left hand, it's maybe just to put my hand here, just to it kind of grounds myself and I'm in contact with the object, so I feel like I have a little bit better control. But I'm not really sure how much that actually does. Personal preference, what you do with your left hand. So I'm bringing this in, and you can see now I'm starting to clean up that edge. It's shaving some of that clay away right there. I can take this and I can angle the tool a little bit, which will give me a little bit of a beveled edge, if that's something I want to do. The goal of trimming is to remove that excess clay that you don't need. It will make the piece lighter and more refined. Also, removing the excess clay makes it a little bit lighter and makes it much cleaner in appearance. We want it to just be a nice, clean, finished bottom. We also want this to not wobble, and we want to remove that extra weight that's right here because my bottom, it's always a good idea when you're throwing just to leave it a little bit thicker. The last thing we want to do is trim right through this thing. So it's a good idea before you even put it down to just look at your piece, be familiar with it, kind of have a rough idea of just how thick this actually is. If you made it very, very thin, there's not a lot you can do in this trimming stage right now. But I always leave, about that much when I'm throwing, so I can trim away, a bit and be okay. So what I like to do here is I like to lean right over my piece. I like to use this tool and I just bring it straight down, kind of like a needle on a record player. That's all I'm doing as I do this. And if I move it around at all, it's just changing the position of where it is. If you view this bottom, again, as a clock, 12 o'clock is here, 6 o'clock is here, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Everything I'm doing is within the 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock range as this spins. I never move the tool over onto the other side. And I like to hold it like this so I can just come right down with a lot of control. I prefer to use the loop end when I do this. So I'll get it spinning. And I'll start close to the middle, but not exactly in the middle, because again, I'm on the other side there, 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. You can see I'm just starting to remove some of the clay. You can see already it's looking much cleaner, which is what we want. Now, if I do move this tool around, I can go from the center and I can go in a straight horizontal line outward. Like that. If I move this tool right now, this direction or this direction, it will gouge it and wreck it and make it not good at all. So you really would want to move the tool only in that direction and back, or lift it up and place it down, lift it up and place it down. And I'm really only working right here in this area. I rarely move my tool at all anywhere over here or anywhere else, right? Now, to make sure that this piece does not wobble, here's what I like to do, and here's what I recommend doing. You want to leave a raised outer edge here, and you want to sink everything in the middle down. So what I like to do first is, once this edge looks similar to how I want it to look, I'm going to go in about 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch. And I'm just going to hold the tool here until I've dug down and created a little trench. So you can see that little trench that's developed right there. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that depth of the trench and make it match all the way from here all the way to the middle. So it's completely sunk down from everywhere on that inside of this raised edge right here. There. Now what you can see is that the raised edge here, everything in the middle is sunk down slightly. I've eliminated excess weight, excess clay that I don't need. I've made it appear much cleaner. And that's kind of what I want. So last steps to do here. I like to take my damp sponge, spinning the wheel, and just hold the damp sponge to everything. What this does, it just slightly smooths out everything. So there's no like crisp edges or anything like that. I like my things to appear a little more organic, a little more of like a free-flowing form. So I want everything to be rounded slightly and smooth. And that's what I like to do with this. At this point, it's a good idea to sign your piece if you're going to be signing it like that. There's also other things that you could do if you want to get creative and add little designs and flares and things like that. I could take this needle tool right now, and if I could just do a little concentric rings, which maybe you can't see on the video, but it's just a little design aspect if that's something you want. You could throw a spiral in there. If that's something you want to do, you can do it. It's easy enough. If you don't like it, you just erase it with your sponge. And I've left just a little bit of a spiral right in the middle there. I think that's kind of neat. I'm going to leave it. I like it. So, next thing, we remove the clay that's been holding our piece down carefully. And by the way, when you are locking your piece down, if you press a little too hard in this direction, like towards the form, and this is just a little bit drier than it should be, it can always crack this. So be careful when you do that. The next step is you take your bowl up and just give it like a look over. So I've got just a little bit of surface stuff on here I want to kind of smooth out with my sponge. Sometimes a little bit of the clay will stick to your form, which you want to kind of get rid of. I'm just giving it one last little look over here, making sure it appears the way I want it to appear. And I can turn it over, and you'll notice now if I turn it over and place it down, this does not wobble at all. It is a nice stable bottom. The profile is nice and clean, which is exactly what we want. That is a nice finished wheel thrown bowl, which is the goal of what you want to do here. So that is the trimming demonstration. Good luck.